going to be talking about healthcare in both the medical center and Garden Ridge with our liaison and our chair of our medical committee for the resident council. And we're glad to have with us this morning our Dolich and Peggy Paterson from the council. Peggy is the liaison to the committee from the council, and Ira is the chair of the committee. And we're glad to have both of you with us.
Well, good morning. Thank you.
All of us need health care. All of us need medical care. What is the philosophy here at Green Spring about health care and medical care?
Well, it's my opinion of that when we started working on our goals, it became pretty clear to me that although it sounds simplistic, all the committees have a common thread, and that's communication. Okay. And that communication works as you take the concerns, the questions, the general interests that the residents have, and then you have that filtered over to their basic areas of responsibility. So obviously each committee has a different area of responsibility. Right. But in the healthcare field, I think it boils down to two things. The residents, I think a fairly heightened level of sensitivity. They have interest in their overall well-being, and certainly, and that's effective in the medical center. Right. And then in terms of Garden Ridge, it's aging in place. Okay. So those two things, I think, are really clear in our mandate, so to speak. And I think it's important in terms of overall communication. It has to be transparent. It has to indicate what's going on. It has to be measurable so the residents can see whether things are falling off or whether they're improving. Right. That's a general overview that I would have of it. Okay.
Are things improving at the medical center?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I stopped by the medical center this morning because I wanted to get the most recent count of doctors and staff. And I was speaking to one of the staff members, and she was saying from the other side of the desk how much better the medical center is and how pleased she is to work at the medical center.
Wonderful. It's great.
I would add one thing in terms of understanding how things work around here in medical thing. The day after, actually January 3rd, so that was my, let's say, first official day as the chair, I walked into the medical center and said, here I am. I want my primary care here at the medical center.
Wonderful.
So this is what gives me a really good idea of what's going on, because now I'm under their aegis.
Right.
On the second side, and I can develop that a little later on if you'd like, my wife is a resident of Garden Ridge, right. And she's been there for 2 years, the same length of time that I've been a resident here.
Right.
And I'm very active over at Garden Ridge and get to see them almost on a daily basis on how they operate.
Yep. And with that, I mean, you really get to see the ins and the outs.
Absolutely. You get to see it, not only do you get to see it on a daily basis, over a 2-year period, even though I'm not there 24/7,
right.
You get to see how patterns develop. You get to see how different staffing members come in and interface with themselves, which is a really important thing, and how they interface with the residents that are over there. Okay. And obviously there's a lot of excitement with the opening of Dogwood Commons. A lot of people have now been settled in there, and right. Peggy and part of her group, Garden Ridge ambassadors, have been very instrumental in helping them get settled over there. So there's a lot of hands-on activity for the residents and the members of these various committees, right. And the day-to-day operations of these both entities.
Okay. You keep on mentioning the committees, and I would hope you would as chair. How many people are on the committee?
Well, we have 17 members of our committee. Okay. We have 2 of those members are doctors. We have 5 nurses. Okay. So the majority of the folks that are really hands-on, they know what they're talking about. They know what to look for. And that's a very reassuring thing. We have, let's see, we have 5 doctors in the medical center. Dr. Dar, Dr. Sarti, the
podiatrist.
Podiatrist, thank you. Dr. Sethi, Dr. Thomas, and Dr. B.
Okay.
And now we have Kathleen Taylor, who I know has been here talking about her position.
Right.
And we have a good number of staffing behind the desk sort of people. We have an LPN that is coming to the medical center. She's not an actual member,
Okay.
but she comes from home health and she comes from over the Garden Ridge. She sort of rotates, and so that's been a big help.
What is her role? What is the LPN's role?
Well, she's behind the scene. She helps with the technical things that a patient might need to have done,
Okay.
and helps with the resident to the doctor.
Okay. Because she's licensed to
Yes.
bandage, she's licensed to,
Yes.
to pass medications. Okay.
That's correct.
And a couple of things came to mind when I said we were looking at things that we could measure. So a couple of numbers pop up in my mind that I think are kind of interesting, and we're still trying to really get a good look at these, but I think in general I can mention them without causing
Sure.
any discomfort. There are close to 12,000 visits a year to the medical center. That's a
Wow.
big number.
Yes, it
and
is.
I know we're very number oriented when it comes to how many meals are served in the Jefferson, how many this and that. But this is an interesting number. That's a big number because
is.
you're talking about 4 to 5 doctors. Now, those visits cover not only a visit with the doctor, but it's blood draws and just people coming in for information. So we want to drill down in that and see what that really means. Another number that really surprised me, almost 86% of the residents use the medical center
As their primary.
as their
Yes.
primary. So that's really a good number. I think one of the things that I look as a personal goal, I'd like to see how that compares to other Erickson activities, and I'd like to see more of those comparisons,
Right.
because if there are any significant differences, that gives you some insight into what's going on in your operations. Another thing that I find very interesting, we have this patient portal,
Right.
and about 76% of the residents use that patient portal.
Wow.
Another big number, and I've used it now that I'm a primary care patient over there, and it works wonderfully. I had a blood draw, and 2 days later I had all my results pulled up. And I
Great.
could read them,
Super.
and then
In regards to the portal, if somebody is not using the portal, how can they go about getting on the portal, the health portal?
well, it's just a website, and then you just go on it and then sign in. Basically, that's pretty easy to do, and you can get the directions directly from the main desk. They'll tell you how to sign on to
Yeah.
the patient portal.
But the entry is through Greenspring.
All through Greenspring, yes.
Okay.
It's not. You don't have to go on to AOL or
Right.
Amazon and get a new app.
Okay. All right. Yes, Peggy, you look.
I was just going to add to, he's telling us, the statistics of people. I want to make sure that the residents know that besides the 5 doctors that are in the medical center, we also have, and I'm going to read this because there's so many ology names here, an audiologist, the dentist, the dermatologist, nephrology, neurology, ophthalmology, urology, and Dr. Martinelli is upstairs. Orthopedics, and the cardiologist, Dr. Shahab, he's upstairs.
Okay.
But those are all, available to us, as well as the 5 regular doctors
Okay.
that we can see.
So all
And
of those come in at least once a month, right?
Yes, at least.
Okay.
And those doctors, the specialty doctors, you have to make your appointment through their office.
Okay.
And whereas the other appointments that you would have, you would make through the desk at the medical center.
So if you wanted to see an ophthalmologist or you wanted to see the audiologist, you would call that
Their
particular
office.
right?
And make the appointment.
Whereas if you wanted to see Dr. Sethi or Dr. Barr,
Correct.
you simply call the clinic.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
In regards to that.
Yes.
I've used 2 of those specialists, the audiologist and the dentist, actually, and they're both very good, high caliber.
Great.
Yeah,
Very
so-
good. So you recommend them?
I certainly do, yes.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
by continuing to go to them, I continue to recommend it.
There you go. Yeah, and I think it's a really good
yes.
way of looking at it. If we continue to go, obviously either we're satisfied or we're too lazy to go someplace else.
Yeah.
Well, as we age in place, and we are, it's going to mean a great deal to us to be able to go to a doctor that's right here.
One of the other things, neither one of you have mentioned, I understand Dr. Sethi shares her time between the clinic and Garden Ridge.
That's correct, as well as Dr. Dar.
Dr.
Dr. Dar is up there with a great deal of frequency, yes. And that continuity is very important for the residents up there. I spent a lot of time as a volunteer in nursing homes, facilities, almost 25 years when we lived in New Jersey. Both my wife and I, before she took ill, volunteered for 25 years in one nursing home.
Wow.
So, and those were in the days before terms like Alzheimer's or memory care, but everything was dementia.
Right.
Or your grandma's crazy. I hate to say that, but that was the kind of things you had to deal with. So I have a sense of what goes on there. And this continuity, not only with physicians, but also with the staff, is extremely important.
Yeah. With continuity, one of the things that happens if you go through the clinic, your blood can be drawn there. It's sent
That's
out.
correct.
The
Correct.
results come directly
Correct.
back, right?
That's correct.
Now, is there a new thing about having blood drawn outside the clinic and getting the results back in? Is there an issue?
I would have to say, in general, that's under construction. There's turned out to be a software glitch, not necessarily with Greenspring. In fact, the people who provide that software,
LabCorp.
sorry,
LabCorp. Yes.
have determined that it's on their end, and
yes.
they're working to straighten it out. So everything is good to go here once they straighten it out on their side, and I suspect that'll be done rather shortly.
Yes. Okay. One of the other things that we have that you haven't mentioned, I know that we have in the clinic, because I've been using the clinic for 11 years, is we have x-ray abilities, right?
We do. We have the x-ray ability, and Crystal has been working very closely with them because we weren't real, I'll say, we weren't real excited about the process. And so she has been working with them very diligently to make sure that things are being done as they should, with the x-ray, of course.
Very good.
But you can go down to the medical center and have your x-rays. Or they will come to your apartment if need be.
Same thing in Garden Ridge. They have a lot of outside services that have all sorts of equipment that they can bring right to the residents' rooms.
Right. Very good. Many years ago, I had an x-ray in my apartment, and I was amazed that they would come in after hours, wheel down the hall and go to the apartment and do what's necessary in regards to it. If we're going from independent living over to Garden Ridge, what do we need to know from a medical standpoint?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that question, to be quite honest. I mean, as far as what the resident has to know,
right?
Well, the resident certainly, if whatever that is, there's going to be an evaluation anyway when you go over to Garden Ridge.
Right.
And there's, if you use outside medical help, then the doctors have to provide a workup, the latest types of information that they have, blood work, all the normal type of things, even if you change physicians.
Right.
So it's not necessarily changing from one venue to another, but it's the same kind of process that if you went to a brand new primary care doctor, you'd have to provide that kind of background information.
And our doctors do go over to Garden Ridge, as we mentioned earlier, but even the podiatrist has appointments and goes over to the
Good point.
Garden Ridge to take care of any problem that a resident might have at Garden Ridge. And they are actual appointments because the residents over there are as busy as we are.
Yeah.
And at the resident meeting a couple months ago, one of the residents spoke up and said, we really need to have appointments for our doctors because I might be going to play bridge or whatever. And so they've been making sure that the appointments are made and the resident knows exactly when the podiatrist might be there.
Grace note about Garden Ridge. Peggy triggered this. I was doing a little article or a little input into upcoming Flash, and I asked the production staff, the activity staff there, to give me an idea of the number of hours of planned activities, and it's a little bit under 800 hours a month of activities. So they have as much to do there potentially as we have for the residents here with 200 separate activities.
Right. That's amazing.
That's a big number.
That's a big number.
You know.
I don't know about you folks, but I have not been on the big Ferris wheel at National Harbor, but the residents at Garden Ridge have been.
Oh, very good.
And I think, golly, why didn't I offer to
Right.
You
help
go with them, right?
Yeah, and then I could have done it. But they take the residents out to restaurants for lunch and just all kinds of activities.
Okay. Well, you also mentioned the fact of the ambassadors. And who are they, what do they do?
Well, I'm going to let Peggy take a shot at that because she's been with them longer than I have.
Okay.
Well, we actually have two sets of ambassadors. The ambassadors that I work with mostly is our committee, and it's an educational. We want people to know about Garden Ridge. We want people to understand that going to Garden Ridge is not the end of the world.
Right.
You're going to get fantastic care. Are there bumps in the road? Of course there's bumps in the road. There's bumps in the road in independent living.
Right.
But you're going to be taken care of, and your meals are going to be extremely good. They're very nourishing. They do great work in the dining area. And just the educational part, so that it's not so scary when you end up having to use Garden Ridge. And then we have the other, we have the other ambassadors, which is Lynn O'Connor has helped with that. And when a resident goes into assisted living or rehab, they're sort of assigned an individual that goes in and just, how's your day going? Can you reach the clothes in your closet? Is everything put in your dresser drawer the way you want it so it's comfortable for you? Just the little things.
Oh, okay.
And they're only there for, just a few weeks until the person really feels comfortable, and then that's it for them.
Okay. So it's kind of like a welcome home type situation?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think overarching the whole thing is you're trying to provide a continuum so that you reduce the stress that's brought about by any kind of change, which all of us respond to inversely proportional to our age.
Right.
We get more stress the older we get, or maybe directly proportional is a better way.
Yeah. But we have the resources, though, to deal with that stress.
Absolutely.
To relieve ourselves with the stress and to learn how to deal with stress. And you mentioned Kathleen Taylor, who's in the clinic.
Yes.
And she's a social worker. She's
Right.
a licensed social worker, so she's eligible to do counseling
Right.
and get reimbursed for that.
Absolutely.
And of course, so if someone's having issues, coping issues, mental health problems of any type, then contact the clinic and make an appointment with Kathleen, right?
And the thought occurs to me that if residents here in independent living would like to know more about Garden Ridge on a first name basis, think about volunteering and come over there and do some things, because they can always use extra pair of hands.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with having the opportunity to wheel some residents to an event, for example. Because as you're doing that, you get to see the whole operation.
That's
and
true.
the more you do it, the more you learn, and the more comfortable you'll become.
And
Frankly.
you can even go on the Ferris wheel, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Volunteer to be a chaperone.
Yeah.
I missed that particular tour as well. Yes.
Yeah.
If I wanted to volunteer to be work at Garden Ridge, what would I do?
The coordinator volunteers is Yvonne. I'm not sure if pronouncing her last name is Andor or Andor, but she has an office at Garden Ridge, and she'll sign you up.
Okay.
That's for sure. Give her a call. Her number's in the directory, or just go over there.
Yeah.
And so she's on the second floor in Garden Ridge.
And it's Yvonne. It's Uvonne.
Yes, Yvonne. Correct.
Yvonne.
Right.
In regards to it.
Right.
But she'll sign you up and you go from
Absolutely.
there.
He'll get back to you, and you may have some specific interests or skill sets that I think, will try to put into use pretty quickly.
Yes, Peggy.
The other thing that I was thinking of was, in learning about Garden Ridge, they have tours of Garden Ridge the first Tuesday of every month.
Right.
And also, in year before last, we had all of the resident council members go and take a tour.
Right.
And then we asked each committee chair to get their committees together and go over and have a tour, so that spread the idea of what
people
Garden
learn.
Ridge is all about,
Right.
and you really need to learn
Yes.
that it's not a scary place.
Right. Well, also, if you are curious about Dogwood Commons now, you can go and take a tour.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that will give you some insight into the future
Yeah.
to a great degree. It's a different building in a sense. And eventually the entire entity will look that way because once everybody is situated and placed so they can continue or start actually some really, taking it down to the studs actually and then rebuilding it. Every room will have, more or less every room will have now a private shower.
Right.
And it's going to be quite a facility.
Well, the rooms in Dogwood Commons are beautiful.
Yeah, they are.
And
Yes.
very, very spacious in regards to it.
It
So,
really is.
if I was going to Garden Ridge right now, if I found out I needed to go, what would be the steps to get me there?
Well, the first thing is they have a whole department that handles that. It's run by Brandon. Again, the hot lights in my brain's not as good. I can't remember his last name, but Brandon is responsible for that, and he has 2 or 3 other people. You have Alexandra and Stuart, and they'll set you on the path, get to tell you what you need to know, and it's a very, very good process, having gone through it myself with my wife, and for other people who've done that. So we're very well organized, and they'll let you know everything you have to know.
Okay.
Those are the 3 people I would start with.
And so we have assisted living, we have skilled nursing, and we have memory care at Garden Ridge.
That's
And
correct.
rehab.
And rehab.
And rehab.
And rehab.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
And rehab is a separate area.
Yes.
Right.
That's correct.
Yes.
And we have the rehab here within independent living as well.
Right, at Hunter's Crossing.
Okay.
And I have run into people who are in rehab and occasionally in the halls, and I'll strike up a conversation with them. And they're from out of town, some of these people, and they far out of town. And they say when they needed rehab, they wanted recommendations, and they said Green Spring is the place to come. So
Good.
that's, I think, a pretty interesting and very strong recommendation.
Well, for those of us that went to the ribbon cutting of Dogwood Commons, and Roy O'Connor mentioned the fact that when we were planning Dogwood Commons and we were talking about doing renovation over at Garden Ridge, one of the things we were talking about was moving all of rehab over to Garden Ridge, moving it out of independent living. And the decision was made, no, we can't do that because of having to transport people over.
Right.
People from Forest View didn't want to have to walk all the way over or take a bus all the way over. And so we wound up with having the 2 different sets of rehab, both in independent living and Garden Ridge. So.
And the rehab at Garden Ridge has all the departments that rehab in independent living has.
Okay.
The physical rehab, the occupational, everything.
Right.
They have a little kitchen and.
This thought of something else that I found fascinating when we started to really understand what was going on at Garden Ridge. There is a resident council, if you will, a resident group.
Yes.
And all the residents, once a month, they have a meeting, and all the department heads at Garden Ridge are there, and they let it fly when things are not good, and some of them are extremely eloquent. And there's a lot of follow-up because the next month's meeting starts with a review of the things that were brought up. So the residents have a chance to really make it well known, either the good or the bad, just like we have here.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And there's also comment cards over there too, right?
Oh,
Yes, there are.
for sure.
Okay, in regard. Can an independent living resident go over and have lunch over there, or is there any?
Well, I go over there, but I do that when my wife is there. But I've had meals over there, and I just charge it to my meal of the day.
Oh, okay.
I think because I'm known there, and I've been up there for programs or to attend to my wife, so that's a slightly different issue. I actually talked to one of the supervisors there about some of the residents in independent living who sit at my table jokingly said when they shut the cafe down, can I go over to Garden Ridge and have my meals there? Less of a crash. I said, I don't know, but I'll ask. And so they really didn't have the provisions to handle that kind of load.
Numbers, yeah.
But I think if you let it know that you might want to come over and try a lunch or try a dinner, I'm sure they would accommodate you. And I hope they don't call me when the thing is over. But
I think you're safe.
Yeah, I think I'm safe. But I think they would do that because it's important. I've eaten many, many meals there, and the food is very good, very nutritious. They have not as large a number of meal choices or selections, but clearly there's enough of a selection.
Okay. Well, I know also in the past there's been individuals from Garden Ridge who've come over and eaten lunch or dinner here in independent living. So, two-way street.
Exactly.
It is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Okay, in regards to that.
Yeah.
All the services we have in independent living, we have barbershops, beauty shops, available in Garden Ridge, right?
They are.
Absolutely. They have a
They
salon
are.
on the second floor, and they do a great job. They're always busy there, so it's a very popular place. In fact, one of the kind of humorous issues at the last residents meeting, one of the male residents at Garden Ridge said, "We want a barber," because only barbers know how to cut a guy's hair, and they're looking.
That's been an issue around here for a long
long time.
But he said, "We want a barber," so and they're looking into it. Okay, let's see what they can do.
Yeah.
But there's also a convenience store, right?
No, there is none.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Now there may be when they finish the
renovations.
the renovations. There, I think there was supposed to be, because you and I were at the same meeting, and I think they are intending
there
to
was a
have
discussion about
something.
that, yes.
Right, but at this point, no, there is
Okay.
not.
All right.
Yeah.
There were refrigerators, small refrigerators in the rooms. Yes, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
There are.
But there's no cooking facilities.
No.
No.
Okay.
And in assisted living, the medications are kept in the resident's room in a locked cabinet.
Right.
And it's the counters, underneath the counters in the kitchen, they're sloped down, so if someone is using a wheelchair, they can get up to the counter and up to the sink to use it.
So
They're
they're not
really
stopped by the wall.
No,
Yeah.
they're really designed for the use of the residents there.
Okay. You mentioned wheelchairs.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of wheelchairs that are used over there, right? And Green Spring provides those wheelchairs.
For most of the residents, yes, but you can buy a wheelchair. Occasionally, for various purposes, you can get a wheelchair through rehab. Will order those so that you can get the best time. They'll actually help you fit it.
Okay.
But invariably, the issues that I've had with wheelchairs, everything has been provided by the care plan that I have for my wife.
Okay. You mentioned the care plan, both in outpatient and inpatient.
Well, when I say
think-
care plan, I'm talking in a general sense.
Okay.
I really can't speak to whether they have a care plan type of
Okay.
thing there.
But they do have the, and I'm not sure how frequently this is, but they have the meeting with the family members.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I
Yeah,
talked
and
about
part of the plan of
Yes,
care.
absolutely. They have a care plan on a periodic basis, used
Okay.
once or twice a quarter, depending upon the resident themselves.
Right.
They're very thorough. They'll have the social worker. They'll have basically the senior nurse on that floor and one or two of the people who actually care for the resident with some frequency, and a person from the program department who gets to see that individual when they have their exercise programs or some other stimulating kind of programs, the overall condition of the resident. So
Okay.
it's very thorough.
Yeah.
And they also are, after they have this meeting,
Right.
if a family member has not been able to attend that meeting, they make a phone call to the family and talk
Update
to
'em.
them and tell them about the meeting and how their loved one
Wonderful.
is doing. They used to do it by letter, but then they decided that was kind of cold, and so now they have switched to doing it, talking
Right.
by the phone. In fact, I think Ira really kind of was an instigator of that, because he got his medical printouts, and he wondered, who this was and who that was, and you looked into that and found out, well, this is Dr. Sarti.
And
this
so,
is,
And so with that, all the care's followed up with, everybody has input, and if we need to go to Garden Ridge, it's not a bad place, right?
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely guaranteed.
All right,
Yeah.
very good. And before we leave this topic, I just want to point out to everybody, blood drive is coming up, right?
Yes, well, we had the blood drive.
You had the blood drive.
We did
and-
have the blood drive, and we had 35 units
Okay.
that would help out to save 105 lives. And the next blood drive is October 17th. So
All right.
you can start eating all the good, rich food that builds up your blood so you can give blood.
You want to hit on the forums,
And-
because I know you want
2
to.
seconds, forums.
The forums are, the medical center's going to have an emergency forum about those services on on Friday, April 12th from 10 to 12 in Village Square Theater, and the other one is the Medicare Annual Wellness Visit, and that's going to be the April 26th from 1 to 2:30.
So look at the bulletin boards, look
That's
at the
right.
scroll, go to the forums, important information, right?
Exactly.
All right. Thanks both of you for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Talking about
It's a
healthcare.
pleasure.
We enjoyed being here.
Great to
Thank
have
you.
you.
Okay.